Hi everyone, welcome to my session. I'm going to talk about the identity and access management of things because I believe this is actually a thing. And I'm going to start very briefly to explain what is IAM. So IAM is answering that very question, who has access to what? And if we are a few hundreds here for a week, it's because it's not a simple question, and it's actually a multiple questions, because we have to define, enforce, and audit who has access to what, when, how, and why. So it's a vast topic, and it works with users trying to access resources. And when we talk about IoT, it works with users trying to access things, things trying to access resources, and things trying to access things. And you have to try to answer that question, who has access to what, applied to things, define, enforce, audit, why, when, and how. So with that said, one of the principles we use in traditional IAM to try to answer that question is to talk about the relationships between the object. And Alex had a talk a few hours ago about that. Sal talked about this two days ago. So we have relationships to take into account, and let's try to see what kind of relationships we can see when we have a thing. So it's a smartwatch. It could be anything. That thing is going to be connected to some IoT platform. That's the general architecture we see, and it talks to the platform as a thing. It has to authenticate to the platform, so we understand what thing we're dealing with. And we can have a customer interacting with that thing directly or through a client device. It can be a smartphone, it can be a tablet, it can be anything. And that thing will interact through the IoT platform to some enterprise app, the classic ones. And you're going to have legacy apps, you're going to have new apps, but they are going to be more traditional and less specific to the IoT space. And you're going to have maybe the concept of a digital twin on your IoT platform. And a digital twin is something that's very powerful. It's a copy of your object, a virtual copy, and you can relate to that object anytime. It doesn't get disconnected. It's not constrained in CPU and in memory as a real thing can be, and it can it will synchronize any data back to the real physical object, and that is a powerful concept to connect to maybe partner applications, partner platforms, from the digital twin or from the thing itself. Your customer device is going to be talking to the IoT platform or maybe to your enterprise apps, and is going to interact with the thing, maybe through that relationship. And lastly, you may have some employees dealing with everything. Let's talk about a car. You can have a car mechanics that can access some information about your car. He's an employee, and you have to manage what access he can have on that very car. Can he start the car remotely, or is that reserved to the customer with his customer device? So we have lots of relationships. Well, first we have a lot of actors, and we're going to have to federate all those different actors that they don't all belong to the same organization. You will have many relationships and many flows that you will have to deal with, and some flows will be user-centric, some flows will be thing and object-centric, and you have to think when you design your system which flow is going to be user-centric, which flow is going to be object-centric, and do the translation as we go. More on that a bit later with some real use case. And you already have touch point with the workforce IAM, the traditional one, and the customer IAM. And these are three fields, and you're going to have to decide whether you want that link to be effective, whether you need your thing to be linked to a customer, whether you need an employee to access remotely to your objects, etc., etc. So these are a lot of questions that you have to ask yourself at the design time of your system. And actually, these are questions that we ask ourselves when we deal with traditional users in the workforce IAM, in the customer IAM. And one very powerful tool that we have is to think about the life cycle of a user, a join, move, leave. Well, we can do the same maybe with the life cycle of a thing. And it's not going to be a join, move, leave the company. It's going to be something more like I'm going to manufacture the device. I'm going to distribute the device. I will have to initialize it, use it, resell it, maybe, and recycle it. And at each step of this life cycle, I can have very specific, very key questions to ask myself and very key impacts to consider to take the right decision. Let's see some examples. So for instance, when I manufacture my object, I have to decide what kind of credentials I have to put on that. Is that a password? Is that sufficient? If I'm designing something like a connected flower pot, password is just enough. If I'm designing a pacemaker, maybe I want something more robust than just a password. Do I want a shared secret? Do I want a private key, etc.? And I have many impacts around the cost and the complexity of integrating that. And Sal emphasized something 2 days ago about your supply chain. The manufacturer is not someone from IT. He is an industrial. Sorry, he knows about maybe electronics, probably about electricity, but IT and software is not his job. So you cannot ask them for the moon. You have to be reasonable there, and it can add some complexity. You have to take care about the fact that your IoT platform may or may not support some types of credentials. And these are very, very important things to consider when you design your object. Then you're going to have to distribute it. Do you know who you're going to ship your object to beforehand? And are you going to you do some user pairing beforehand or afterwards? Are you going to sell through Amazon, so you don't know who's going to get what object? Or are you an ISP and are you sending set-top box that you can assign beforehand to users? It has some impacts, some key impacts on the processes that you have beforehand and on the processes that you have during the rest of the life cycle. Customer care scripts, for instance, the self-care capabilities, the way you're going to be able to resell an object or to reset the object are going to be impacted with such a question. You then have to initialize the object. You have to make a choice whether you need a user to be associated and to be paired to the object, and whether that object is going to request resources in the name of the user. And typically putting some auth token in the object. Maybe that has some sense. This has some sense for your use case, maybe not. And are you going to pair the physical object or the digital twin? Maybe your auth token can stay in the cloud, in the IoT platform, and it's easier to do that than to have a token on the physical object, because that physical object is constrained by many things. Okay, now you use the object and you have to decide for each use case, each interaction between the different actors, is that a flow that is user-centric or object-centric? Does it have a meaning that the object is doing something, or is it doing something in the name of a user? Let's take the smart TV. It's accessing the YouTube application. It's done in the name of the user because you want the user to have his viewing history, things like that. If you take, let's take the connected flower pot, you don't care about the user pairing. You just have to know the ID of the serial number of your flower pot, and you can request information about your plants being enough watered or not. This will have also some. There are also some questions around the remote access for maintenance. We deal with startups that are deploying some objects in the wild, and they want to make sure everything's fine, and sometimes they build they don't realize, but they build backdoors inside the objects so they can access them and they can get access to some logs and then they can debug and they can do that. So maybe it's fine for an alpha version, maybe it's fine when you have a limited set of users, but it happens that it goes to production, it happens that it goes to millions of users if you're successful as a startup and you discover that you have remote access on some objects and that you can do, and this can be a quite serious problem for their privacy. You have to ask yourself the question whether you need to collect that data, whether you need to retain that data for how long, and is it really useful, or are you just getting some toxic waste on your cloud platform, on your applications that is useless for you, and that is really a problem for end user privacy. The resale, it's often overlooked because you're a startup, because you're building an object and you just want it to work once for one client that you got, and you don't care about reselling. So you don't care and you don't think about the processes to reset an object, to pair it to a new user, to make sure that a new owner doesn't have access to the old owner data. That is also some privacy issue. And you have an impact on the brand image. If you discover after the fact that you cannot resell the object because the object is useless to a new owner, you're going to suffer. And if you're a startup, it's going to be very hard for you to go through that. There are some challenges to the resell process. I can implement a reset button easily on a flower pot. It's not so easy to take that decision for a car. I have some legal obligations, maybe, not to allow anyone to reset a car and to be able to take ownership, digital ownership of a car, and maybe I have to go through the process of having the new user prove he's the new owner of the car with something like a DMV form registration. And maybe the new owner doesn't care about, it's another problem, maybe the new owner doesn't care about taking ownership, digital ownership of the new car, and the old one stays in possession of it, and he can, for instance, remotely control the lightnings, or even worse, he can honk while you're driving on the highway. That can be a problem, and it is very hard to build a robust process to detect a change of ownership, for instance. And these are crucial questions that you might have to ask yourself when you design your object. Lastly, when you recycle the object, you have to, some users are worried, and they should, about their data. Can they reset the object before they throw it? If the object is dysfunctional, can they still do something about their data? And I'm sure you've seen some things about, well, I've seen an article where researchers have just taken light bulbs, connected light bulbs, in the trash, and they were able to recover Wi-Fi passwords from the trash. And the users have, when the light bulb is not working anymore, the legit user has no way to reset it. So it can be a problem. So many questions, many impacts on the user lifecycle, and we find that it is very useful to use the concept of relationships, the concept of lifecycle of a thing, to ask yourself the right questions, and to be able to answer that very question about who has access to what, or what thing has access to what. But I want to talk about real life. I want to talk about real use case. So very quickly, Wavestone, we are a consulting company, and we help our clients go through their digital transformation. And we have offices throughout the world, and we have an office in Gotham City too, and we help our clients there, hero and villains, go through their digital transformation too. And I want to focus on some use cases that we had with Wayne Enterprises. So the Batarang. quite easy. It's only a low-range connectivity, either Bluetooth or RFID, depends on the version that you have with you, and it connects to well, Batman's phone, the Bat phone, obviously. It's quite easy to design. It was fun. It was a fun project to work on. A bit more elaborate, Batman's utility belt, it's paired to the user with the device flow from OAuth 2. It has local biometric authentication. It's quite tricky. We have MQTT connectivity to the Batcave, which is actually the IoT platform for Batman. And from here, we can access Wayne Enterprises applications. But the real use case, the real project that we've done is the Batmobile. The Batmobile connects to the Batcave through MQTT with its own object account, Batmobile. Batmobile? I'm not even sure. It has a digital twin representation on the Batcave, and Batman can access the Batmobile using fingerprint authentication. Actually, more recently, we added the capability to use the Bat phone to access and to open the Batmobile. And Batman had to log on to his phone with his account from the Batcave. Okay? From here, we can access and we can have access to some applications held by Wayne Enterprise, but of course we have to translate Batman identity to his Wayne Corp account. So there's here some standard RFC 7523 token. Well, it's a JOT-bearer token profile to change the identity that we use to request APIs on Wayne Enterprises. And from here, we can access with a corporate account, with a service account, to the Gotham Maps partner to request the maps of Gotham City and to feed that back to the Batmobile. Of course, we can also access from the Batcave directly to some Justice League applications. And here we use a Batcave account that is held by the Justice League. We don't have to go through Wayne Enterprise to do that. We have some administrator, so some guy named Bruce Wayne, another one named Alfred, that can administrate some things, some applications on the Wayne Enterprise side, and as well as the Batcave. I don't have all the details on that. It's a bit blurry, but still this user exists. And very recently, we worked on a new version of the Batsuit, and the forearm armor is now Alexa enabled. So we had to ask Batman to create an Amazon account so he could pair his Batsuit to Alexa. And from here, we build some skills, some Alexa skills on the Wayne side. And here we use, we paired that with the Batman at Wayne Corp account. Of course, this works for a variety of vehicles on the Batman side. So, of course, the one I prefer is the original one. 99 Batmobile is the best one. I'm sure you will agree with me. But it still works with other vehicles. And it actually works also with the Robin Mobile. So he has his own account at the Batcave, and this will discuss with the Wayne Enterprise with the Robin at Wayne Corp account. I think, yeah, that's it. So that's when you can take the picture. So what you can see is that on each of those flows, we had to ask ourselves what is the right account to use? What is the most sensible and most logical account to use? Is it user-centric? Is it object-centric? And as you add functionalities, as you add use cases, you have to take that decision. For each use case, you have to ponder the pros and cons of every decision or every architecture and design decision that you make. Okay, one takeaway. Of course, IoT security does not limit itself to hardware and firmware security. If you are here in this room today, I'm sure you're convinced of that. And I want to say that IAM of Things, Identity and Access Management of Things, is really a necessity to do security by design in the IoT space. And just like traditional IAM, I think we need to think about relationships. I think we have to think about the lifecycle of the users, of the objects, sorry, in order to make our objects more secure. Thank you. Actually, I have some time to take some questions, it seems, so. Is it okay? Any questions? Okay. Yeah?
What would you say is the most fundamental mental shift, if you will, in the IAM industry to start inculcating these types of
The most fundamental?
mental shift or thought process, paradigm shift for IAM professionals to start inculcating these types of complex skills? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So the question is, what is the most important mental shift we have to do in order to go into that IAM way of designing things? Is that, yeah? Okay, let's put it like this. Well, actually, I'm not sure I know the answer. I know that this worked better when we proved that firmware audit and pen testing on an object was not sufficient. And when we proved that some basic processes involving humans, either consumers or employees, were very prone to being attacked. And if you focus on the objects only, you will miss a lot of open doors. And it's very easy to find open doors on many objects, I think. Not on the object itself, but around it, the processes, etc. And I think when you're conscious of that, that's when you think about application security. That's when you go to the identity and access management of things. I think that's when you get the shift.
The whole ecosystem of relationships that you have described to us is very interesting. How do you represent that into a dashboard for all those users? Did you work in such thing, doing a live representation of the relationship between those devices, those entities, those users, in order to be able, like, for example, there is this good example about a thermostat. And there is a divorce between a wife and his, so there is a divorce. And one of them is playing with the thermostat just to make bad things to the other one. So we may want at some point to have a dashboard to who can interact with these IoT devices and through this representation.
Okay, so on the enterprise level, that view is available at the IoT platform. That's where you need to design those views. That's where you need your customer care, customer care support to have a view of for a user, for a customer that's calling. Has he any object paired, actually? Is it one? Is it two? And is that object available? Is it online right now? So that dashboard sits on the IoT platform, that's for sure. And the ability for a user to have this visibility is currently, I think, not really provided by IoT platform. This is something that you have to build. IoT platform provides the API to get the information, but you have to build the UI, that's for sure. I would say. I would say the IoT platform is in the center of the if you look at the Batcave, it's really in the center and of a lot of relationships. That's where you get the most information. That's very critical to use.
We have time for one more question.
Very good presentation, thank you. On your manufacturing slide, you had something called IoT PF support. What do you mean?
IoT platform?
Platform.
Yeah,
okay.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. George, you have one.
All right, we'll sneak one more in.
So in this model, the IoT platform is sort of run by the manufacturer it appears.
Okay.
So how does that map with, let's say, a more home-centered thing where I'd actually like the IoT thing to connect to something in my house to manage it rather than it reporting data up to the manufacturer?
Okay. Well, yeah, this is related to some model where you have an edge gateway, and not only an edge gateway for connectivity, but you have an edge gateway to actually store data. And in a privacy-preserving view, I don't think this is really the current model that we see deployed. I think we should explore this. Currently, edge gateways are here for connectivity. They're here for computation, and sometimes for data minimization before they're going up. But it's very. I've never seen one where you don't want that to be connected to some central platform. And currently, IoT platforms have control. Well, keep control on the objects. And I guess one of the reasons is that the IoT platform, the very basic need that it serves is the device management. You want to be able to have a view on the objects which are online. What version of firmware do they have? Can I push a new update? So this is the main purpose they serve. And we use them on top of that. We use them as application platform. We use them as a PaaS solution to develop on that. I think that's maybe a problem that we should try to separate those responsibilities. Yeah.
And feel free, additional questions to
Sure.
Bertrand after.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.